everyone, and welcome to another Risky Rollers podcast. I'm Dalton, I'm here with Locky,
Hello, everybody.
and today we're going to be taking more of a hobby look at things, discussing about how we improve as hobbyists and what we think is important about that, both painting and modelling, and also on the playing and gaming side of things.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. This one, I think this is going to be a nice one.
Yeah, it's a topic I've actually been looking forward to discussing, so should be good. As always, you can check out Dice Arcade and use the code Risky Rollers to get a discount when you check out. We hear some more about them later on from Tim. And make sure to jump into our Discord where we're hanging out, doing a bunch of hobby stuff in the Discord.
Heaps.
So if you like what you're hearing tonight,
Yeah.
or whenever it is you're listening to this, make sure to check us out in there. We've very recently gotten set up to do streaming and stuff, and I'm sure we'll talk about that a bit later. And we're just doing hobby hangouts, and it's just a really great place to be.
Yeah, for sure.
And if you want to go above and beyond the incredible fact that you're even watching or listening to our stuff, you can jump onto our Patreon and support us there. Every little bit helps. And it really is just incredible. The people that are already doing it, thank you so much. It's amazing. And anyone who feels like it, it's always really appreciated.
Yeah, 100%.
But yeah, so without any further ado, let's get cracking. Locky, what have you been working on recently?
Sisters. Yeah.
Yeah?
My sister's project. So, it's I kind of had a tied up the Tyranids, did some GK stuff for the channel, and then now onto my sisters, which has kind of been a bit of a experimentation into a new swathe of techniques that I haven't done before, which is using enamel washes and alcohol and all that sort of stuff. So, as in alcohol as a like white spirits, not drinking for the first time.
No, that's definitely not something you need to.
Yeah. So yeah, it's been cool. So my sisters, going for the grim dark feel. Nothing really new. I'm not really, breaking any boundaries or doing anything sort of unique. I mean, it's definitely been done before. But it's, working with a completely different sort of paint medium and I guess just medium in general, in a way, has been interesting.
Yeah. And they're coming out really well. I'm sure you'll all have seen them on his Instagram and on the Risky Rollers Instagram by now.
Yeah, definitely. I think by the time this comes out, there'll probably be a fair bit that's probably thrown around.
Yeah,
which is good.
Yeah, absolutely. And they're coming out really well.
No, cheers.
Nice sort of dark plate armor style. It's really compelling.
Yeah, well, the theme was the look I was going for was medieval Catholic knights. As in like
it fits really well with the whole sisters theme.
Yeah.
And their lore.
So it's good. It's good that it's working.
Yeah.
Basically. That's good.
Yeah. For sure.
And yourself? What have you been doing?
I've been all over the place. Finished up the Dark Eldar, and you'll have seen the last bit I was working on for that on Instagram by now, which was the Archon conversion. And as well as having finished that, I've been doing a bunch of finishing up a couple of little projects. At this point, some kill teams and things. Getting back into a little bit of painting with my Tau. Enjoying that quite a bit. As well as prepping to do some work for some Grey Knights for the channel. So I've been sort of flitting between a few different projects, just sort of tying up some loose ends and finishing some things off where I can.
Nice. That's good.
Yeah. So you mentioned that you're trying out a few new things, and that kind of leads nicely into our main sort of discussion or thrust of the conversation for today, which is that how do we improve as hobbyists, and how do we actually approach doing that?
I think it's like a two-step process with improving as a, I mean, I would, okay, I'm going to speak more from a painting point of view, because this is kind of what I did.
Yeah.
And then I think through this process, I did become a better painter. And the first step is recognizing where you are at, first of all. And I guess it's kind of a little bit like, not necessarily as bland and boring as a, pros and cons, strengths and weaknesses kind of thing. Just more in terms of, what do I do well and what don't I do well, and from a technical point of view, not an enjoyment point of view, just like whenever I edge highlight, 90% of the time I'm producing a really top quality level, or I find I'm dry brushing, I'm really good at dry brushing, or whatever it is.
Just taking a very sort of realistic look at your skill set and going, all right, what's working, and just being open and honest with yourself about what you can actually do well.
Yeah, and I mean, I look, I kind of try and I'm saying take the emotion out of it and go, don't look at what I enjoy. But more often than not, 9 times out of 10, the things that you enjoy are the things you're going to be good at, because you're going to be doing more of it.
Yeah.
So that's the first step. And then the second step is, actually, maybe there's 3 steps. The second step is more looking at what you like from other people, i.e., do you like the sort of wet blended fade looks? Do you like that more done in a dry brush kind of aesthetic? Do you like hard line transitions? Do you like non-metallic metal? Do you like true metallic metal? Do you like whatever?
Yeah.
And then comparing that back against the first step, are there things that I really like that other people are doing that I have that's related to my skill set? And then the third step is obviously, acting upon that. And then the acting upon it, it sounds a bit weird that you just go ahead and do it. Obviously, it's not that simple. But I think that third step of improving something and improving your painting or improving your hobby skills, you need to know where you are and what you're going towards before you can do that.
Yeah. It really does sort of come down to, like, once you've got the clear direction, it sounds pretty cliche, but it does come down to going and doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're not going to improve your skill set on something that you're not doing and not practicing.
Of course. And I think I don't know if it goes without saying, but there is an element of trying something without, like, your interpretation of what that skill is. For example, it's like, okay, I can literally have a real world, this whole process I can break down for what I've done, where I've always loved the look of non-metallic metal and how it's done, and that crazy level of wet blending and glaze blending that is done. And I've always known that since I got back into the hobby, and I've realized I've got to get some other things to a standard first before I can approach that. Now I'm at that point where I'm like, okay, I think I can start tackling into it. So the first step is kind of recognizing that, hey, I wasn't at that stage of my own ability. Now I am at that ability. That's the reflection part. And the second part is, that's something that I really like. I'm going to do it. Now, how I'm going to act on that is not just I'm going to grab a bunch of paints on a 4 or 5 colors in a spectrum and go, say if we're doing golds, we're picking yellows and browns and whatever, and just going to try. Well, no. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to learn from someone who knows how to do it, and that's going to be a tutorial, or that's going to be a video, or that's going to be speaking to someone personally, reaching out to an artist on Instagram or whatever. The best thing I think that people can do in general, especially from a technical point of view, is ask someone who's already doing it, how are they doing it? Because if you can learn from someone else's mistakes, it's just less mistakes that you have to do, right? Or that you're potentially can fall into. And I think that's how I approach improving my hobby and painting. Yeah. Well, one of the ways anyway.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I mean, there's a bunch of different ways to go about it.
What about you?
It's well, I feel like I do something kind of similar, but I almost approach it from a different way of looking at it when it comes to being able to do certain things with painting. Again, talking about painting specifically here. I'm well aware that I'm not an intrinsically talented painter or artist. Um, that's not. It just is. So when I come to paint something, I think of it more as it's almost like a craft. I go into it and I go, well, if I want to achieve this look, or I want to do this specific thing, then I need to develop a recipe and a certain process to do that. And that's how I approach pretty much everything I do when it comes to painting, basing, even to a lesser extent modeling and putting things together. I go, well, I've got a set system by which I can achieve this look, and that's how I'm going to do it. So when it comes to improving at that, I think of it like expanding the toolbox of different things I've got and different things I can do. So I guess at that point I'm kind of doing something quite similar, where I'll look at a specific technique or a specific look and go, all right, how have people achieved that, and how can I take that skill set and apply it to what I'm working on?
Yeah. Because there's also a big difference between learning a new skill and then applying it in a way that is unique, and then
Right, yeah.
to you or a project that you're working on or whatever. And then I think some people do get caught out where they might be trying something that's a little bit more complicated or something that's new, and that kind of the first couple of times it's just not working because the way they're trying to incorporate it in too much of a unique sense, if that makes sense, rather than just kind of it would be the same thing of like I've seen, because I'm about to get into airbrushing stuff as well, like one of the first things I've seen that I think it was Squigma or it might have been Miniax, one of them, because I watched them both. One of them goes like, before you even start looking at a model, grab a piece of cardboard, and if you've never used a dry brush before, put a black paint in it and just do like lines on the thing, just so you can see how the pin works in relation to getting the feel for whatever dry brush you have, and understanding the pressure differences, and that process is applied to everything, right? That process is applied to, like, if you're learning how to weld, from when I was in my apprenticeship and doing that, so we literally did the exact same thing, where you'd have a pipe and you just weld straight lines right across the pipe and just go and fill the whole pipe up with weld, and it was just like you're looking at that going, this is idiotic, but then when you kind of look back on it, once you do know what you're doing, you're like, oh well, that makes total sense, and it fits that feel of what you're trying to achieve.
Right, yeah.
And it's baby steps. I mean, teaching yourself something as well is we see it in music when you learn drums or whatever, or you're playing guitar, all your teachers will say, play it slow, play it slow. And it's the same sort of thing with like with hobby and with painting. I think there are definite steps that you can take you can have an end goal, like, oh, okay, I want to be a heavy metal painter or a golden demon winner or whatever, but you don't just go, I've been painting for 3 months and now I'm going to start doing these crazy techniques, because you're going to fail, and then you're going to feel shitty that you failed, and that's probably going to deter you from doing it. Bottom line. So
although I will put a slight caveat on that, which is that if that's something you're comfortable with the idea of failing and doing it, sometimes it can be good to just like throw yourself in and try these advanced techniques and complicated things.
Yeah, of course.
As long as you're comfortable with the idea that you're probably,
if you're going to fail, that's of course. Like, I mean, there's always the concept of the best way to become proficient at anything is fail fast, right? The faster you fail, the quicker you iterate. It's a huge design philosophy. The better the product, or the better the skill set becomes, right? So, and that, I wholeheartedly believe in that process. 100%. Go step outside your boundaries and do that.
But that's got to be in the situation or a context where you're previously aware of this and you're already aware this is what's going to happen, and it's not about to drive your enjoyment away from the hobby or from what you're doing.
Because it does, man. It's like straight up. Like you have an idea of like how you want something to look, and then you put all this time and effort into it because you weren't sort of ready for it, or it was too complicated, and it just falls apart. It can be demoralizing. It can be like,
oh yeah, for sure.
You know, it can be like you could have had a whole idea for a project army or a project thing, and it's not turning out that way, and then you're just like, because I've had that happen to me where I'm like, oh, I really shouldn't have done this. And you really feel like shit, and then that model just sits there for could be forever, could be could be, you know, and then you might even just be like, I don't even want to do this anymore, and that's a really bad place to be in. And that's the thing. That's why I say, like, look, sometimes we all need to go through that to kind of learn. Oh, okay, that was, again, it comes back to what I was saying the first, like knowing where you are in your ability or whatever, you know. That reflection process. But I do understand that it's not easy. It's not easy to just go, oh, am I this good? Am I not that good? Like, it takes steps to kind of figure that out in the first place. And, you know, that doesn't necessarily work for everyone either. I just think, I guess my approach is probably quite analytical, and it's probably quite, you know, logical, and there's steps. But yeah, fail fast and always test your boundaries.
Yep. I mean, I think, I think I entirely agree with that, and it's a very, I think it's quite an important, and as you said, quite difficult step, but quite an important one to learn how to look at your own painting, your own work, and go, all right, realistically, where does this sit? How good or not good is it? And that, because unless you can do that, you're not really going to be able to look at it and really be able to improve it. You're not going to be able to look at it and go, well, all right, if I'm failing and falling down on these areas, that's what needs work to improve on.
And there's a fine line there too. Like, you know, when I worked in games, there's a lot of artists, 3D artists. I think it's artists in general, and, you know, us being painters, we could argue we could call ourselves artists. You know, it's the striving for that perfect thing, you know. It's like you know, you speak to a musician after a show, and then you'll be like, oh bro, that was amazing. They're like, oh, but, you know, in the second chorus riff of the third song, you know, I made a mistake. And then, like, and you go, because I used to do the same thing as well when I used to play heaps, and eventually learnt that it's like, if you didn't say that, they didn't notice. So who cares? It's irrelevant. You know, if you know that you've missed some slight part under some head that not everyone can see unless they looked really close on a model, don't tell them. Just pretend it's not there. You know, like. I
mean, that comes down to that idea of applying the whole 3-foot rule. Yeah. Which is that if you can't see a problem with it at 3 feet away, which is, you know, where it's going to be on the table, then that problem doesn't exist.
Just the same thing as like painting inside cockpits and stuff.
Yeah, just spray over it and paint over it.
If you can't see it, don't paint it. You know, so there is a huge element of I guess perfectionism, or and, you know, if that's what makes people happy and that's how they enjoy their hobby, obviously fine, go nuts. There just is some limitations with that on your own personally. I feel that mentality does have limitations on growth.
Well, I can speak to that precise mentality causing problems. For many years, that was how for like 3 or 4, that's how I would approach painting miniatures. So I would go, well, I need this to be perfect, or as perfect as I can get it, which meant that I would, you know, I'd paint it and I'd do it, and I was constantly going back to touch up these tiny bits, and then I'd mess up touching it up, so I'd have to go back and fix that. And it would go on, and I'd end up just spending way too long doing anything. And it meant that not only was I not enjoying painting, because it became this huge slog about having to get every stroke and everything perfect, but I wasn't achieving anything. I wasn't getting anything done, and because of that, I wasn't really learning anything either.
Well, and then you're getting no endorphin release because, in, you know, maybe even subconsciously, the model's never finished, right? So you're not getting that. Right. Oh, yeah, I'm done. Sick. Like, you know, tick that box, move on.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And it wasn't until I actually had that whole process where I sat down and thought about it and went, well, all right, why am I finding it so hard to do anything? Why am I finding it so hard to finish anything?
Did you find the answer?
Well, I think the answer, at least in that specific case, was that I was I was too worried about the small details. I was too worried about getting it perfect. And so I went, well, all right. The next thing I work on, which happened to be an Imperial Guard force, I went, well, all right. I'll do something that has all this chaff infantry, it's Imperial Guard, that I don't, like, I know that I don't need to worry about every little detail. I can go on it and I can slap some paint on it. And I actually set myself a rule, which was that I would paint it and I wouldn't do any touch-ups at all.
That's good. That's a great step.
I went into it, I just painted it all, and I can guarantee I can pick up any miniature in that army and go, and I can bring it up close and look through it and go, okay, I can see a few spots here where I've missed this, or I've spilt some grey onto this blue, or however, whatever it was. But just the act of forcing myself to let it go and not fix every little issue, it was pretty hard to get into. It was pretty difficult to get myself to just leave it. But once you paint 20 guardsmen like that, and you paint a few different things, and you go, oh, well, I'm getting things done. I'm putting them on a shelf and going, wow, this looks good. This is an army. This is a force.
Yeah.
So, and I think it comes down to being able to let go of that perfectionism on everything. But then, I suppose the alternative flip side to that is when it comes down to when you've got specific projects that you want to spend time on and want to do justice to, specific models or whatever it is, you can sort of bring a bit of that back in, and you still have that drive to do well and to really push the limits of what you can paint.
You're finding a battle about finding that balance, right?
Right. Yeah.
And I mean, like, there's so many ways in which you can achieve what you want to achieve without, especially in an art form with like there's not one way to there's not one way to skin a cat, or whatever the statement is.
Yeah.
What is it? Yeah. Is that the right one?
One way to skin a cat.
Yeah. So like I kind of mentioned it before, you can do like color fades, wet blended, glazed, dry brushed, even hard fades where you literally just use we've spoken about it before. It's an oil painting technique where you actually don't blend the colors. You actually Howard Arkley does it as well. Like, you use block colors. Howard Arkley's like a pop artist, Australian pop artist from like the 80s. But you can use blocked colors of the same like tonal range within a color to give that look of shading. I think Squigmar does a video on his busts deliberately about this kind of technique where you don't have to, be worried about smooth transitions from color to color. You can get it by picking the right colors that move in the right kind of wave, or the right step to get to emulate what you're trying to achieve. Well, right.
I mean, it's interesting you bring that up, because wet blending is something I've got plans to try it out on a project in the near future, but I've never attempted it thus far. But that I believe Squidmar did a video on doing those hard fades, and after watching that, I went and I tried a bunch of non-metallics without blending, just doing those hard transitions. And they came out quite well as far as I'm concerned. And again, it's about looking at that from that 3-foot rule and going, well, on the table, that's gold. Done.
Oh, 100%. And that's the other thing too, like there is a difference between studying it, like looking at this stuff from a color theory art point of view, like, oil paintings, like I said, or, because the models are so small. You can get away with so much more because it's so small. We have things like washes and contrast paints and stuff that like just help you cheat it. But the thing is, like, just because it's easier, it's not exactly like it's not any less good. Or and I've always said that in everything in life, like, if you can find the easiest way to do it, do that. Like, just because it's harder doesn't make it
that's clever. Like, that's
like, don't get me wrong, like, obviously things, in general can be a little bit more rewarding if they're harder, but at the same time, like, completing something is completing something. As long as you're not, hurting anyone or anything, that's it's easier. That means you can get more done and you can feel better about it quicker, and, seems like a no-brainer to me, really.
Yeah.
And
It
that's
comes
how
back
like I
around
did.
to why I made the distinction earlier between being a craftsman or an artist. Is I don't think of myself as an artist even when I'm painting minis and stuff. It's not what I am. I'm a craftsman. I have a specific skill set and I do it to achieve a certain goal, and the goal isn't necessarily the art itself per se.
That's an interesting one. I've
Um,
never actually thought of
hmm.
it like that. I mean, because
And
like when I
yeah,
paint, like I would consider myself a miniature painter artist, I guess.
yeah.
I mean,
Well, I mean,
not,
I've seen
I'm
and
not, I'm
talked to you
not,
about your
not
painting
great.
process, and I think it's. I mean, you're pretty bloody good, but
If I compared to and look, literally what we're saying right now is also one of the worst things you can do. Comparing yourself to other people is just like,
yeah,
you know, obviously from a technical level you can compare. Have I made this blend smooth? Yes, no.
right, yeah,
But then you're in the objective territory, not subjective, because
yeah,
it happens so much. Like I saw it heaps in games as well, where 3D artists and that were just comparing themselves to each other, even their workflows and processes and how they worked, and you just
mm,
like, it's not you, bro. Like you just find what works for you, and it's like the similar argument of, or the discussion, regarding sable brushes and synthetic brushes, and you
yeah,
have some of the world's best painters, literally the world's best painters, that use like 30-cent brushes or $2
yeah,
brushes or whatever. How that works for them, I have no idea, but it does, and you
mm,
can't argue with that. At the end of the day, the product's there. It's not like they're lying about it and they're like secretly
yeah,
doing doing it on the back end. There's a conspiracy about it. So everyone's got their own way of approaching things. And
yeah,
I think unanimously across the board, because I watched a lot of the top tier painters talk about these kinds of topics as well, and a lot of them, one of the things they always come back to is paint. You know, paint daily if you can.
mm.
If you can,
Just
if it's half an hour, doesn't matter. Take
just
that.
do it.
Yeah, just do it. Take
Like,
that one
yeah,
aspect, and you go, oh, okay, I don't have enough time to set up a whole thing. Fine, I'm just going to block out all my blacks on this one model.
yeah.
Do it, and if you paint every day,
You're going to improve by virtue of
hundred
repetition.
percent, 100%,
Yeah.
100%.
And
And the thing is that, sorry, go on.
I think that as a starting point is like at a very basic level, do it regularly, do it every day. Do it. I mean, maybe you can't do it every day for whatever reason, but do it as often as you can, and that in and of itself is going to make you improve. And if you're starting there, that then gives you somewhere to build from. You go, well, all right, I'm just doing it regularly. Now, what can I think about specifically about what specific technique can I work on? What kind of color blend can I use? How can I improve my understanding of color theory?
Mm,
And just doing that little bit every day, and then you can start mixing in those little bits of specific techniques or specific looks you're going for.
for sure.
It's gonna improve in leaps and bounds.
Yeah, 100%. One of the craziest things I noticed when I started, because I used to like do a lot of oil painting and stuff, and when I was at uni for game design and stuff, I just couldn't do 3D art. I couldn't. I'm like, I need something physical, yeah. Like, give me clay or a canvas
Mm.
or a pencil or whatever, So, but one of the things that I found across the board was what the repetition did. It wasn't giving me more confidence. It didn't, expand my horizons to try new things. It increased my speed,
Yeah,
like so much, just to do something like, okay, I'm going to sit here and I'm going to block out the colors, the base colors of a model, right? Just one model. So I'm going to, block out the colors of the cloaks that, and you prep for everything, right? So there's aspects that you might be doing like heavy dry brushes. There's aspects that you might be like prepping for washes, or there's might be, whatever it is that you're doing. You sit there and block out your colors. And, from the beginning of when I got back into 40K to how quickly I could do that now, it's like, 200-300% quicker,
yeah,
if not more, and those things you don't really notice until later on, and that's kind of what encompasses a lot of it, because you find that you end up spending, and this is purely just from repetitious painting of
mm.
any form, that you find that the things that would be mundane and normally take you such a small amount of time that your brain power can now focus on, like, I want I want to get this highlight like Mickey Mouse, or whatever.
Yeah.
So, and that's just, I think, just a natural thing that happens in our brains or whatever. That's just we become proficient in the simple basic thing. I mean, you'll know probably more about how the brain does this sort of stuff than what I will from this regard. But
I mean, like repetition is how we train those pathways, and it is how we entrench all this into. Now you test me. I'm trying to remember the different memory systems that would be relevant here.
Short and then long.
No, not at all. It's how we move it from I guess like an active memory into a
like a passive one that's always sort of there.
Like the same way that you don't think about how you walk.
Yeah,
You don't think about how you drive.
It's like they would say muscle memory in like quotations, right? Because muscle memory
kind
is not
of
a thing.
something. It is and it isn't. It's something slightly different, but it's along the same lines.
Yeah, gotcha.
It's that thing where you're no longer thinking actively about how you're just highlighting because it's what you do, and instead you're thinking about what can I do to achieve this specific look? How can I make this nice and crisp? And once you've got to that stage, it means that everything you're doing, you can be pushing just that little bit further.
Yeah,
just
and you
by the
actively
fact
look
of
for it.
doing it.
And you find you look at it and you find stuff. You go, there's sometimes you get to that point and I think you kind of get to that point as well when you've done by the end of it. I mean, I don't know about you, man, but I always struggle with the last like 5-10 models of an army, depending on the army. But like if it was a lot, I just so struggle to get across the board.
I think it's something to do with the fact that it's so close. You're like, oh, I can knock that over in 5 hours and finish that army. Cool, I'll do that. I'll do that Saturday, or I'll do that whenever.
Yeah. And
then you just never quite get there. I do the same thing with models that I've almost finished painting. I have models that I'm like,
it's just scaled down, right? At that point,
right? Yeah, a couple of hours, I'd finish that model, and so I never do it.
Yeah,
because I know it's only a couple of hours away from being done, so it's not a big deal.
And that's sometimes like that's kind of a really good direct example of what I was talking about at the beginning, where sometimes if you don't know where you sit in your own ability and you set the goals of something too large, you can get caught in that trap. And it happens, it's happened to me with buying way too many Tyranids and expecting to paint it by a certain period of time. And I've learned now, like, that's the thing, it sucked, but I'll literally learn, and I've said this before, but now I do not paint any more than 5 models at a time.
Well, I mean, that's a really interesting one when it comes to, I guess, motivation, and that is having manageable things, manageable projects, or manageable
I think
things you're going to work on.
We're going into goals now, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, almost, and I think it's managing your expectations and setting yourself, knowing, and it's going to sound weird, but knowing what your actual goals are.
Yeah, and setting achievable ones. Yeah,
but more so than that, just being consciously aware of it. It's very easy to go, I'm just going to sit down and paint some minis. All right, well, what are you achieving? What is that miniature, or whatever it is you're doing, but what is that for?
Yeah.
Why are you painting that? How are you going to achieve whatever that is in such a way that you're happy with it?
And tiered goals as well is really important in this situation, I think, personally. Your little goals that build to your big goals. So, for this example, now I know that if I build too many minis, it sits there, and then I paint a couple, the goal has become too big.
I think it's very common for that to happen. People will assemble an entire army, or
I can't
even an entire unit, and then sit there and go, "Well, that's a lot of grey.
Yeah,
it's a lot of plastic to put paint on."
Yeah, go on. Sorry,
I'm saying I've definitely had that specifically with my Necrons. I've got 6,500 points of them, and when I had all of those, or probably only about 4,000 points of them assembled and sitting there visible on my shelf, I thought, oh, this will be great. I'll see it and it'll compel me to paint more. But all it did was make me look at it and go, good Lord, how am I ever going to get through that?
Yeah.
And it was demotivating.
Yeah, I mean, it is. I find it that as
Mm,
well. I mean, the reason why I built all my Tyranids was that I wanted to play with you boys, right? So in our
yeah,
club, I was playing Deathwatch, and like I've said this before, I refuse to play. Well, these words are going to come bite me, aren't they? Considering
they are, yeah.
I, I've got I up until this point, I've refused to play Primaris Deathwatch because I just
Yeah.
hate Primaris models. I reckon they're dumb. But I currently have our my Deathwatch army being commissioned, and there are some Primaris in there. Anyway, so it was tough, and I was like, I'm just not really enjoying playing this army. I really love Tyranids. I always have whatever.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, but I want to play it. Like, I don't want to just have these. When I was only at the time, hadn't figured out what was the best way of painting. I wasn't painting every day. I wasn't doing an hour. I was doing like 3 hours on a weekend or something, and it just wasn't enough.
Mm,
It wasn't enough to get a squad done, let alone 2,000 points.
yeah.
So, and then I built the whole thing, and it was great because I got to play with them, and
Oh
I got
yeah,
to the point where
absolutely.
you're like, okay, I'm sick of seeing grey plastic on the table,
Yeah.
and playing, and then it became a slog because I had to, and then tournaments, the tournament, and then that was the driver to kind of get them all finished. But we know people that thrive on that.
Yeah.
Give me an end date, give me a goal, and I'll smash it out. And I'm like, nah.
Yeah. A deadline like that, like a tournament or anything, or even filming the first episode that we ever released, the Necrons and Space Wolves.
Yeah,
All that means to me is I'm gonna keep putting that off until the night before, and then I'm gonna work all night to get it done.
yeah.
Um,
It's a standard
to
like
be
study before an exam, right? Like,
well, weirdly enough, I'm not like that with study. With study, I'm all over it. I'm ready to go weeks in advance. But
yeah, right.
for whatever reason, for painting miniatures, deadlines kill me.
Yeah, yeah. I
Um,
mean, yeah, and I'm the same. I'm
and
the same. I hate them.
and the night before, I'm like, all right, I just need this done. I've done it for Armies on Parade. I've done it for my Tomb Kings going to a tournament. I did it for the Necrons for the channel. Um, it just becomes something where I go, oh, I've got a deadline. Well, I'm just going to sit there and do it. Um,
And this kind of reflects as well,
yeah,
like a little bit of the first step of kind of what I was saying, that yes, know where you are, but also I think maybe to tack on top of that is why are you doing what you're doing? You
yeah,
know, are you painting this stuff just to get ready for a tournament? Are you painting this because you do want to improve yourself, improve your speed or improve on a technical ability, or do you
mm.
want to whatever, you know?
Well, I think it's interesting as well. So I'll bring that point up and go hard on it. That having, and you may have multiple goals for a certain thing, but having a specific, not as an endpoint, but a specific reason that you're doing it in mind means that whenever you're sitting there and deliberating what to do or how you feel about it, go, well, all right, what will this achieve? Is it relevant to where it's going? And if not, then just don't.
Mm,
Um, and the example again, the idea that I'm doing something for a reason. If I'm painting, painting a space marine, well, that's because I want to play with this model, or I want it to sit on a shelf and do that.
mm,
Maybe I'm trying out a certain technique or something like that. I tend to uh, do army projects and things like that specifically to learn techniques, and I'll do a single technique or a single skill across an entire army.
mm-hmm.
Um, but knowing what those are, and I can't stress enough that it is actually something you probably need to think about, and as in you probably need to spend some time thinking about it because it's hard to figure that out sometimes.
Yep.
But
It's the same.
knowing why you're doing it and potentially deciding why you're doing it. Am I doing this to make it the best painted Dark Eldar I've ever seen? Or am I doing this to have an army that looks good on the table and ready for filming, as well as, learning volumes and things with it?
Well, now you're just talking about expectation setting, right? And again, we were
I
coming
think
full
it's. I think
circle on a lot of
it's. I
this.
think it's subtly different to expectation setting because it's about, you know, you can have a goal and set your expectations higher or lower than where it ends up being.
Yeah,
But I
true.
think it's about having that goal in the first place.
Well, then let me
My
rephrase and
goal,
say that
your
the
goal might be entirely far above your expectations, and that's fine. You can have a high goal and not reach it, or expect to not reach it,
well, I think to
because you'll
make
still progress along that.
yeah, personally, I think to make a regular, consistent project, that your expectations should be somewhat connected and relevant to your goal.
Yes.
And maybe it's like a fraction high, your goal's a fraction higher or whatever, and you see how you're going to go, but ultimately
Yeah.
your expectation is pretty close to the same thing. You know, and it takes time to get there too. You know, it takes a bit of an iterative process on your own thing. The other thing I just can't stress enough, and I've done this before, but test schemes. Before you paint a model, or before you start going hammer and tongs on it, you know, do one test, or two tests, or three tests.
Yeah.
Sometimes deliberately pick, and I've done this before, which is when I was deciding on how to do my Tyranids. It helped this, where I did a scheme, and then I literally picked the adjacent color, the opposite colors on the wheel, and swapped them out. I was like, let's
try it.
Let's just see what happens.
Yeah.
And then just like let's just see if this works. And whether or not you actually utilize that, you're kind of not doing it from a perspective of, oh, does this work? It's more of sometimes the structure of what something looks like can differ depending on the colors that it's put with. You know, just, you know, the shape of everything can change. And there's been so many stuff to talk about how color affects what we see and how we see it.
Yeah.
So, and then the other thing is, even if you don't want to take that time, an easier thing to do is piece of pen and paper, pencils. Draw your really shitty version of a Space Marine on a piece of paper with grey lead and color it in.
Yep. Or
just grab pencils.
You can do that on the computer these days.
Yeah, but I mean,
there's all sorts of tools out there that you can use to
you know,
digitally color models and stuff like that.
I also think that there's a connection to physically doing it.
That's true, yeah.
That is beyond, you know, the 3D rendered, you know, version of exactly what it's going to look like, and because also as well, again, that falls into expectations. Because if you're a person starting out and then you're using this mad 3D rendered project of the colors you're going to use, and they've got like this filter that helps blend color, like it's not going to actually look like that. You know what I mean? Your pencils you're going to use, you're not going to be fading pencils. You're going to block it out as like a 2-year-old does, you know, colored drawings. So, you know, it's more or less closer to what you're actually going to produce on the mini.
Yeah.
And it's quick and easy. It takes all of like 10 seconds, really. You're like, oh yeah, that's cool. I mean, even I'm sure you could even find a silhouette. A T-pose Space Marine 2D image. I'm sure there's one out there on Google's. You know, jump on that and just color it in, and you know, because it's how I did a lot of art projects and stuff like that, where you grab a scanned version of the silhouette and just to color block, and you'd use pencil before you put any piece of paint onto the canvas. You do the same thing and you just pencil block it out, and you essentially you do 2 pieces of art, but that was one of the processes I found really, really, really helpful.
Yeah. So I think it does. It comes back down to setting your goals, managing your expectations, and then when it comes to actually doing them, having a good plan, and as Locky said, testing it out first and knowing where that is. Because I think, that comes back to, you know, what's your goal? If your goal is to paint an entire army, well, you need to know how you're going to do that.
And ask for criticism as well.
Yeah.
I mean, ask specific people.
Right.
Don't.
I mean, ask in general, and then when you know, ask your Facebook group, ask your Discord, ask your mates at the club, and then when people come back with good feedback, press them on it. Go, oh, you're someone I need to talk to. And they
I think if you're ever gonna ask people publicly, i.e., Facebook and stuff, be prepared for answers you may not expect.
Oh yeah.
You know,
be prepared for the get good crowd.
Not even necessarily people that are that way. Just, you know I get somewhat quite analytical with things, and also the biggest issue with online regarding these kinds of things is there's no tone transferred when it's written on a page. Right, so, you know, someone might actually be, if someone was to say something through Facebook, how it's delivered is so different if they were speaking in person. And especially if it's something that you've put a lot of time in. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying don't do it. All I'm saying is that, again, manage your expectations of what you're going to get into. If you're, if it is the first time you've done it, maybe just ask your mates at your local club, or someone that you maybe know that is a really good painter, or reach out to someone privately on their Instagram and go, hey, like, you've inspired me to do this. This is what I'm thinking. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Whatever. Like, as much as people don't think, people would love that. If someone came to me and said, "Oh man, and I've done this before because people have asked for schemes and stuff I've done, and they're like, "Oh, I'm gonna do it." I'm like, "Man, when you do it, like, tell me."
This and this.
No. I'm like, show me. Like, I want to see your version of it. Like, and to date, no one's actually shown me, which is really annoying because I'm sort of like, are they actually doing it or not? And just ask people for help as well. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. And most people are going to be so forthcoming and happy to assist. I know I would be if anyone asked me.
Yeah. Well, you certainly have been. I mean, I suppose to demonstrate the point, there was a few weeks ago, I was working on some Thousand Suns and some test schemes for them, trying a really, like, a super concept scheme, using the non-metallic metal method that I mentioned earlier, that I tried using the hard, hard edges for it, and trying to transfer that to like an OSL effect. And I sort of went, well, this isn't quite where I want it to be. All right, and I talked to people in the Discord in general, and then went to Locky specifically and said, what can I do about this, and what do you think about this?
Yeah.
And we spent quite a decent amount of time talking about it and going over different, very specific tweaks and very specific things I can do. Not just you can do the greys better or whatever. It was try this paint, try this technique, do this thing. And that sort of thing is fantastic for, especially someone like me who approaches it as a skill and a craft and not as a intuitive sort of space.
Yeah.
Being able to go to people and ask for that help is fantastic, and I think I 100% recommend, if you're trying something new, ask someone who's done it.
Oh yeah.
Ask someone, because they've made the mistakes, they've messed it up, and they've ended up coming through it and understanding how to do it.
And you know what? 9 times out of 10, that person's asked someone else, and then that person's asked someone else, and then, like, you're never gonna find the first dude who painted non-metallic metal on a miniature, right? Someone's always copied, and someone's learnt off someone, and everyone's come from somewhere.
Yeah.
Somewhere. Some of the best painters in the world, all of the best painters in the world were once probably the worst painters in the world.
Yeah. Everyone has sat down one day and gone, what's painting? What are miniatures? How do I start with this?
And also gone, fuck, that looks like shit.
Yeah. I mean, do you think, what was his name? Was it Sergio Calvarelli?
Yeah. That dude's crazy.
He's painted weird googly white eyes on a miniature at some point in his painting journey. He's gone, how on earth did this tiny brush cover half the face in white?
Exactly. Yeah, for sure. And it's a reality, and it's not uncommon. Everyone talks about it, everyone says it, but really understanding that and believing that and going, like, if I paint every day and I understand where I am, I respect where I am, and I set myself goals, I will get to that. It's so cliche. Hard work and dedication, you can achieve anything. Okay, not anything, but most things. 8 out of 10 things you can probably achieve.
That's why it's cliche. Is because it's more or less true.
Yeah. Well, I think Tim's got a few things to say.
He does indeed. So have a listen to what he's got to say, and make sure that if you're going to try out any painting schemes and new projects, to pick up your supplies from him and use the discount code Risky Rollers at checkout. And
also reach out to him. He's an amazing painter.
Oh yeah, he's far better than I am. And
yeah, same.
dicearcade.com.au. All the biggest brands in miniatures and wargaming. Free postage over $250.
Thanks, Tim. So getting back into a somewhat adjacent topic that I think is something that I've been thinking a fair bit about recently. We're talking about improving as a hobbyist and how all that comes together. And part of that is, for a lot of people, including ourselves, actually playing the game, and coming to the table and wanting to improve as players. How do you find yourself approaching that side of things? And is that something that you tend to think about?
Every single day. I love playing the game. I love playing games in general. But improving as a player is definitely something that I actively explore even more than as a painter. I mean, yeah, it's been really hard to. It's a hard question to answer because of what's obviously been going on and how severe it's been going on here in Victoria.
Yeah.
But my first approach to becoming a better player was basically knowing my repertoire. Knowing the army that I'm playing, and whether that be Grey Knights or Sisters or Tyranids or whatever. Know that army, know it back to front. Read that codex. You think you know it? Read it again.
Yeah.
And read it again. There's stuff that I was looking at today for Tyranids, and I've played a lot of games. Last year we played a lot of games.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
We were playing like 3 to 4 games a week.
Yeah.
Sometimes more
in person and plus TTS.
Yeah, it was nuts. It was nuts, and it was good, and we all got pretty good.
Oh, I mean, I can't wait to get back to that level of play again.
Oh man, same. I just can't wait to go to a tournament. And it's just like, anyway, but even now, I was like, oh, and like obviously meta affects things and how things change and releases, yada yada, whatever. So, but there are still aspects of the Tyranid book, the 8th edition Tyranid book with the Blood of Bile supplement that I go, oh, here's a new combo.
Yeah.
I'm still testing out new stuff in lists using weird things like biovores and harpies and seeing if it's, viable. It's not, kind of, but, and that's what I look at first, first thing is, know what I'm playing, know what I've got, what's in my toolbox, what isn't, and working around that. And then the second is playing against people that are better than me. I want to lose.
Yeah.
Beat me as often as possible. As long as you're not beating me with like a gimmicky thing like AdMech or something like that, which is just annoying.
Yeah.
But finding holes in my game plan is something that I actively look for to improve, because you rarely, actually you don't learn by winning.
No, you learn from the mistakes you make.
Yeah.
While playing, and I think that's, whenever I'm playing, I mean, obviously I try and play well, but I'm looking for the mistakes. I want to make mistakes because that's when I go, oh, that's something I shouldn't have done. I can think about, and not just making mistakes, but looking at them and going, why was that a mistake? What was the problem that caused, and how can that be avoided?
And it depends on how you are as a person as well. Like, I vocalize things. I talk to myself while I'm talking to the player during the game. Right?
Yes, you do.
So, and I'll know second unit that moves of turn 1 if I've botched my deployment.
Yeah.
And again, there are some similarities with what we've talked previously in our previous topic where, listen to podcasts.
Yep.
Learn from other people. When you have the best players in the world telling you that deployment is important and it's the most important, arguably the most important part of the game, next to movement, don't discredit that.
Yeah.
Like, they're saying that for a reason. And that's across the board. You've seen the best Australian players say that. You've seen the best European players say that. You've seen the best American players say that. So, those concepts are really important. You learn from other people's wins, learn from other people's fails. And which, again, it's hard. Some people don't learn that way. Everyone learns different, right? Everyone, some people don't learn from extreme failures.
To a point, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there is a myth that some people have different ways of learning. The idea of like learners that learn by doing and learners that learn by reading and that kind of stuff. Like that's a myth. That there's different types there. Everyone learns by
repetition, right?
And study.
Yeah.
That's what it is. Some people find that easier to do than others, but that is how everyone learns.
But I mean, like, yeah, it's weird, right? Like there's certain things when it comes to like law, for example, my retention when it comes to reading something out of a book from a law point of view. So I know that my learning process is very object orientated
Right.
in
Yes.
everything. If I have a goal, regardless of whether it's any aspect of my life, if there's a goal orientated to it that I'm working towards, I will absorb any and everything related to it. So when say I read law, it takes me quite a while to absorb that information correctly. As in, like, I will have to read the same paragraph like 3, 4, 5 times. But if I'm reading a codex about rules and trying to figure out in my own head the best way I can synergize certain things and then what I would have to come again, I've sat in my lounge room with the sisters book for 5 hours straight.
Yep.
Writing a list, writing one, building it out, playing it out in my head, going, how would this work? How would this work here? How would this work here? How can I game it? What's broken? What isn't broken? What have they FAQ'd? What haven't they? So there is aspects of how people approach these kinds of things that's super different.
Yeah, for sure.
Because I know there's people that definitely don't approach it that way. And playing with people that are better than you in the sense that, and asking questions.
Yeah.
Asking questions
and having the conversation as the game goes about what you both do. I mean, obviously in a casual setting, in a tournament setting, it's very different, but having that conversation as the game's going on about what you're trying to do, what they're trying to do, and why.
Man, I see it heaps in our club, where I'll overhear something, or I'll be like walking past and I'll literally, when someone's doing a move, I'll ask them, why did you do that? Or why are you doing that? Not necessarily that it's wrong. Most of the time it is because they're just like, don't do that.
Right.
And obviously it's done in a way that's polite, and it's not. Yeah. It's not like, oh, I mean, you're an idiot. Why are you fucking doing that? It's in the sense of, are you aware that this, and this can happen if you do that? Kind of, because I get sucked into it too. Do you know how many times I miss Rod?
Oh yeah.
Because all I want to do is scream up the table and kill stuff. That's all I want to do. And it's a really hard thing to move away from. We're playing a game to kill, and we're playing a game to score points.
Yeah.
Especially when you're starting out, I find everyone just plays, I want to kill, I want to kill, I want to kill, and then it's after that they kind of go, I actually don't really need to kill much anymore.
And I mean, that's not necessarily a bad path to go on as far as learning the rules go and learning how to play. You learn that the core mechanics of the game, movement and killing.
Well, I think it's the higher end. It's the higher end part of the game, right? Is that concept?
Right, yeah. But like you learn those basic mechanics of how the game interacts and how models and units interact, and then from there you can then actually use those to do things and achieve things on the table.
Yeah.
And I mean, this is sort of moving more into an anecdotal territory about it as well, where we're going, all right, here's actually what you might want to do and how you might want to go about it.
I think there are aspects of playing the game and improving as a player that is not just one thing, right? Yeah. So I think knowing your army is one factor of that. Yep. Knowing your opponent's army is also a factor in that. I mean, that's sometimes more important.
Yeah, and that's a factor in doing well in a specific game. I think the approaching the game and going, well, I need to know my own army, and then I need to have enough of an understanding of every other army that I might come up against.
Yes. List writing is another big one.
I mean, list writing and deployment are potentially the two most important parts of the game as far as when you're getting to that competitive end of things.
Yeah, it is. I mean, even not even necessarily competitive. Like, just again, I think we've been lucky that both of these topics have some real parallels, because just like when you're approaching painting or a new technique or whatever, having a goal, and you don't always have to, but having a goal from the beginning. What am I doing? What am I doing it for? Is there a purpose? to get the most efficient, because it's always about efficiency, right? Maximizing of time, maximizing of ability, maximizing of money, whatever, right? That process also happens in the list writing stage, and I've said it to people when I've like sort of when they say, oh, I did really bad at this tournament and this was my needs list, and I'm sort of like, I read it going, and I've done this before, I said it on Facebook, I'm like, what is your list designed to do?
Yeah.
Like, when you put this unit in, what was the thought process behind that unit? And obviously you should be doing that for every unit.
Yeah.
Doesn't need to be like, oh, I want it to do this turn 1 and then turn 3 it's going to do no.
Yeah.
But in terms of its general outline, but even if you don't go to the extent of each unit, what's the list? What's the army supposed to do? Is it going to be a mass defensive sit on my home objectives list? Is it going to be a, turn 3 snipe, turn the board around twist kind of list? Is it going to be a turn 1 charge, I'm just going to kill everything list? Is it going to be just a list of attrition where I'm just going to out objective you and I'm just going to, it's an obsec list? Or, there are so many different ways that you can structure that game plan from a general point of view before you even know what your opponents are going to be. And then once you kind of look at the playing field of the meta or of whatever, then you can kind of go, oh, now I need to do my swaps. Or now I need to, oh, what am I missing? Oh, I'm missing an anti-psyker thing, or I'm missing a whatever. And then tweak accordingly.
I mean, that's a big part of it as well. Being able to make those tweaks and those changes comes from playing it, from repetition, from playing the game and losing, and making mistakes and being hurt in as far as like your army can be hurt and have things go wrong with it. That's how you learn and how you can progress with it. And then you look at it and you go, well, here's what went wrong and here's what I can tweak. Here's how I can fix that and adjust that.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, as well, if look, I'm no competitive player yet. Just haven't been able to go there because we can't do any of it. But we've said this before, of the 4 of the last tournaments that were supposed to happen, we were going to be at all of them. And I was always a serious competitor back in the day when I was young and playing it. But you have your limitations when you're 9, 10, 11 years old. You just don't have the brain capacity and the
disposable income.
Yeah, of course, but I mean in terms of just like the mental, how I look at the conscious decisions of things, you just look back then and you're kind of a little bit on autopilot, right? Like, you look at it now and you go, I can consciously do this, that, and the other. But my advice is because this is what I do, and I rate myself as a decent player. I would say I would, if I'd rate my chances of being mid level in a tournament, depending on here in Australia. I reckon I'd do like maybe 3 and 2 or something around that area. But that's because I buy every book and I'm on a lot of groups and I'm constantly looking at just out of it's just interesting, who's good. Like, I'm definitely not a meta chaser, like, at all. But it's still good to know what is out there and what is going to be fun, what is not going to be fun, how it affects you, how it affects them, how it's, all of it. It's still a game. And, you play a game to win. You don't play a game to lose. So,
Right, yeah. I suppose it comes back down to that idea of managing your expectations with it. It keeps coming back to the same few things.
But they're so important, man. Like, it's, and when we say managing, we don't mean downgrading, because you can actually, and this is a thing I think a lot of people don't mention, is you can set your expectations too low, and that could be just as demoralizing and it's just as bad as setting them too high. Yeah. In any aspect, like, it would be like me, okay, have not played a tournament since like 4th edition, to expect to go
9 for 5.
Yeah. I mean, in the back of my head, I'm like, I can do it, but really, in the front of my head, I'm like, it's not going to happen. Yeah. So, there's no delusions. There's a aspiration there, but there's no there's no
Yeah.
doubt that like, no, not
Yeah.
not happening, not happening. But that's also just because I know I don't write lists that are necessarily do. Like I play Tyranids, and I'd be going with Tyranids, so I'm
Yeah.
it's not gonna happen.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's it's just a repetition because I think it's just important. It's important in life, guys. Everyone,
Yeah.
manage your expectations in life.
Yeah.
So
I suppose I'm going to go on a bit of a tangent here and step away from. I guess away from both topics a little bit. And there's something I want to bring up, or someone I want to bring up here, and I'll mention a couple of things regarding it. Firstly, regarding motivation for it, as a very quick side note, watching someone else like learn and grow and stuff. I don't know about you, but for me, it's one of the most inspiring things to see in the hobby. And I think you've probably already cottoned on to where I'm going with this. We've got someone on our Discord who, if you're in there, it's Icon, the Discord, who got in touch with us a while ago with the club, and he's been involved and sort of getting back into it, kind of similar to you, Locky. But getting into it and watching him approach the game with his almost from scratch, coming into it and going, well, he started this Black Templars army, so he's currently working on, and watching his painting progress through that.
Yeah.
From from basics and that sort of thing to where he's now we're doing, super crisp highlights and excellent details and to where he is now. And watching him progress as a player as well, playing him the first few times we met up to play and going, he's sort of understanding the rule and doing some of the things you're talking about where you just go in to kill and you wouldn't be thinking about the way the game interacts well, to where he is now, and he's playing at quite a good level and getting to the point where he's starting to push for that slightly more competitive play side of things.
Yeah.
Not only is it inspiring and fantastic to see, but it's this perfect example of all these things we've been talking about. He's come to painting and he does it all the time.
Yeah, every night.
Every night.
Paints every night. Paints
does.
more than we paint now.
I think he does, yeah.
It's frustrating.
He does it all the time. He's well aware of his own limitations and expectations and goals, and he sets all those really well. We've had fantastic conversations with him about it. He works on specific bits about his painting and has specific ideas about it.
Yeah.
He sets realistic and small goals, as we talked about. We talked about doing one unit at a time or one project and keeping it small and manageable. And he does all that. And he's progressed to the point where, found out today with some of the styles painting, he's doing better highlighting and stuff than I've done in ages.
Yeah. No, dude, his highlighting ability is crazy. Like, hands down better than it, because I don't edge highlight. It's like, no, get out of my face. Don't have anything to do with it. It's good. Like, it's clean. It's just clean and crisp, and that's what you want. Like, nail the basics, and and he's got it down pat, and that's purely just because of having a space to do that comfortably, and again, he learnt from others. So instead of him having to make these failed mistakes, he's learnt from us going, hey man, like, giving him a little bit of advice off a little bit of our experience. And it is so rewarding to help people progress in their hobby and find their own way of really enjoying it, and them then making it their own. It's so gratifying.
It really is. And I mean, you mentioned earlier as well about you want to play games against people who are better than you, and you want to lose games and stuff like that. Well, he's come and played with us and lost a lot of games, and progressed as a player and become a much better player, and he's playing quite well now, to the point where he's winning games now as well. And I can confidently go and play a game against him on TTS and know that I'm going to learn something about it.
Yeah, it's actually interesting that you've brought it up, because I just remembered something about it, because I remember in the early, I think, couple of months of him being part of the club, he reached out and said, what am I doing wrong?
Yeah.
And I said, what do you mean? And he goes, I'm just, with you guys, I lose every game.
Yeah.
And I preface the rest of it by saying, to be honest, our group's pretty, at the time anyway, I think there was only 6 of us.
Yeah.
4 of us were pretty good players. Like, we weren't,
Right.
really, we weren't
I mean,
winning tournaments or anything like that, but like in terms of, from someone who has not played it at all to, to
again,
where
like at this point, we're playing 5-6 games a week where we're doing this all the time. So
yeah, and it's not like we're sitting there going, "Oh, he's gotcha moments" or anything. We'll still teach him how to play, but it's just in terms of how we analytically thought of the game was just so different. And I said to her, I go, man, just stick it out, yeah. In a couple months, when you start playing people outside the group, you'll see your growth, really shine. And it's like, oh, okay. And then we had multiple conversations about, the ins and outs of the game from a basic level, even at an advanced level as well. And then there was a couple times where he's like, I think you're like, it was a couple weeks later, I think it was actually even a month later, he was like, man, you're right, I played this demons list and I smashed it. And then he's like, oh, I played this chaos guy that I played like 3 months ago who beat me by like 40 points. I beat him by like 50 points this time. I was like, see, man, like, and look, that could have just been, again, the repetition, because there was 2 months difference in that or whatever, and then that does, and we were playing a lot. But I also think, and I firmly believe, you only get better by playing against people that are better than you, which is why it's so commendable for people to maintain a top position, and that's in sport, period, right?
Well, I mean, that's the thing, is that you get better by playing people better than you, and you can also, if what you're trying to do is to get better, well, the best way to do that is to make everyone around you better at it as well.
Of course, 100%.
I love playing against him, and I think I'm going to line up a TTS game in the next few days, actually. But one of the things that is going with that, well, I can now go against him and go, all right, I'm actually really going to push this one. And then whether or not I win or lose, if I lose, fantastic. I've definitely learnt a lot out of that. And even if I win, I can go, oh, maybe you can try this bit different next time, and so on. Well, that means that next time he comes to me and we play again, and he's that bit better as well.
Yeah.
And if we're both, and on a larger scale in a club, when everyone's pushing everyone else to get better at it, and obviously in the context of enjoying the game and having a nice time with everyone, but when everyone's pushing each other to get that better, as a group, everyone gets better because everyone's constantly pushing that little bit higher.
And to his credit as well, he's playing Black Templars, which, okay, yes, it's Space Marines, but it's with a pretty poor supplement.
Yeah. I can't wait for him to get his new one soon.
Yeah.
But
he's gonna lose this. He's gonna lose it with that. There have been some successes with Black Templar. Don't get me wrong, but they're veteran players that have been playing for 20 years.
He's essentially come into it playing hard mode Space Marines. And he's still doing really well. And I can't wait to play against him with the new book as well, when he's got the actual proper tools he needs for it.
Oh yeah, that's going to be really cool. It'll be a great test. And yeah, it's good. Hey, for anybody who wants to come and learn to play, come be part of the Discord, and we'll play. Anyone who wants to think this, that comes across this, who's thinking about getting involved with 40k, isn't sure what armies they want to play or whatever, get involved. Come say what's up. We'll play games with you. We teach people all the time.
We'll teach you how to play. We'll play games with you. We'll jump and paint with you and all sorts of stuff. It's
awesome. That's what we really like. And it's one thing that Risky Rollers is all about. Is building a cohesive community. So good times.
For sure. And on that note, I think we'll wrap this one up. Thank you for coming on, as always, Locky.
Thanks, mate. I don't know. Is there ever going to be one without me?
I don't know.
There probably will be.
It's time for me to start planning my bloody coup.
Yes.
But thank you, Locky. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Make sure to check out the Discord and jump in there, hang out with us, and let's all do some fantastic hobby together.
100%.
And thank you for listening, and we'll see you guys next time.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.